and welcome to this Financial Times Lunch and Learn session. We're here in the FT studio at Bracken House in central London. I'm Claire Barrett, consumer editor at the Financial Times and a trustee of FT Flick. That's the FT's financial literacy and inclusion campaign. And I'm delighted to be hosting today's conversation with none other than Megan Archer-Fox, better known as that girl in debt. But plot twist, she's not in debt anymore. Our session today is titled Financial Wellbeing Reset, Building Healthier Financial Habits. And that word reset is important because for many people, money isn't just about numbers. It's about mindset and it's about habits. And often it's about confidence or a lack of it. Rising costs, economic uncertainty, everything that's going on in the world at the moment, frankly, and also constant comparison with others have intensified levels of financial anxiety. And yet, despite the fact that money affects every single aspect of our lives, it can still feel surprisingly difficult to talk about openly. But today is about changing that. Held close to International Women's Day, this event also reflects an important reality, which is that women in the UK are disproportionately affected by problem debt. Nearly 2/3 of debt advice clients at Step Change are women, and that's driven by women being on lower incomes, the cost of living crisis, and higher caregiving responsibilities. So this is a timely and necessary discussion. We're going to start today with a quick poll. So if you could hold your phones aloft and just take a snapshot of that QR code that's appearing on your screen, or if that doesn't work, you can go to sli.do. That's sli.do and put in the hashtag FTFlick. I think it's displayed on your screen. So while you sort that out, let me explain how else you can take part today. So this is a live interactive session and we really would like you to submit your questions, and you can do that at any time during the event using the Q&A box on the right hand side of your screen. Now, a quick disclaimer about questions: we're happy to answer them and share our opinions, but they are just that, our opinions. This is not intended as financial or investment advice, but we will be sharing places where you can go to for more education and support. And we've received lots of questions in advance, which I'll weave into the conversation as we go along, but we'd love to hear from you live, so feel free to post your questions as we go. Now, for the poll question, which you should be able to see on screen now that you've loaded up your Slido. So we'd like to know, please, how confident do you currently feel about managing your personal finances? Now, the answers range from very confident to somewhat to not very to not confident at all. And honestly, there's no right or wrong answer here. The only reason we're asking you this anonymous question is that it helps me to understand where everyone is starting from. So we're going to let that run for a little bit longer. So if you've got your phone up and your Slido working, do vote. Right, okay, so the majority of the audience I can see from my iPad here, just over half, feel somewhat confident. That's great. But the majority of you are either not very confident or not confident at all. Oh, we've got a few very confidents actually coming in that's changing the voting at the top. So, you know, a nice spread. So that's great. But wherever you fall on that spectrum, today is all about giving you some practical tools, ideas for small resets and ways that you can build confidence in a realistic and sustainable way. So let me introduce our guest. I'm delighted to be joined today by Megan Archer-Fox, who, as you know, if you follow her, at That Girl in Debt, is the content creator, journalist and motivational speaker who has a legion of fans on Instagram and TikTok. We're so thrilled that you could come and be with us today. If you don't follow Megan, follow her now, please. She's going to share her lived experience of navigating debt, rebuilding financial stability and transforming her relationship with money, which is something she did by building a community around her content, which is honest, stigma-free financial conversations. Well, Megan, welcome. It's really great to have you here at the Financial Times.
It's so nice to be here.
Well, I know it's also quite strange because, you know, you're somebody who I see on my Instagram every day doing a variety of things. I have to say, this is slightly off script, One of the things that I love about your content is that you post pictures of your messy house.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people love about you.
They do love those posts.
It's real life, and you take the same approach to talking about your finances. You're very open.
Yeah.
Why did you start to so openly share your journey on social media, being £40,000 nearly in credit card debt with your partner? I mean, this is not something that most people would admit to their best friend, let alone the general public.
It's fair. Me and my partner David, we've kept it a secret between us, really, between ourselves for such a long time. And because I'm a journalist anyway, and I've been a journalist for more than a decade now, I love storytelling, and I love doom scrolling on TikTok and Instagram, of an evening. And I'd always wanted to set up my own TikTok account. So when we started paying off debt, like on the first day, we decided, I thought, well, this will help motivate me. I could post what we're doing, but I'd started off as anonymous, so I didn't want to tell. I was still a bit nervous to say that this is me, but the response was just so huge, and I had so many comments and messages of people being like, this is me too. I'm so glad you said this out loud. I've been so worried and like scared about it, that after a week I thought, well, I'm going to be brave and I'm going to say, like, this is me, here's a picture, I'm Megan, I'm a journalist, I live in Birmingham, and just start sharing more and more. Like, the honesty was really helping others, and it was helping me. So I just kept going with it.
Well, when we talk about financial well-being, we're not just talking about using a budgeting app or setting a target to reduce debt or increase savings, but from your own experience, what would you say was the turning point that shifted your mindset when you thought, okay, I need to do something about the level of debt that I'm in?
I had like a moment, like an actual specific moment I feel like I'll never forget. But it was in May 2024, and I was shopping I wanted to buy my partner some new trainers for his birthday. I was with the kids and we were at a shopping centre, and I found some trainers. They were £75. I got out my credit card, ready to tap, and I just had this thought cross my mind that I had these 3 credit cards, and I had a maxed out overdraft, and this third credit card was about to hit its max. And I just thought, well, what am I doing? What am I going to do when this credit card do I get a 4th credit card? That seemed like, even to me, like that was my limit. And I thought, I can't do this. And my little boys were only 3 and 1 then. And I thought, I can't, how am I going to provide for them? Like, it all just was like so much in my head at that moment. And I went home and I talked to David, and thankfully he was feeling exactly the same, quite worried and quite stressed about it. And that's when we decided, like, the moment, like, we had to change like our whole financial habits.
Wow. I mean, you've spoken very openly about the feelings of shame associated with debt, and I hope you don't mind me sharing. David works in finance. There are lots of people, believe me, who work in finance, even people at the Financial Times, who I help to come to terms with similar problems. Something's happened to them, maybe, and they've had to run up a credit card debt, and then something else has happened, and it's become very difficult for them to pay that off quickly. But in terms of dealing with those feelings of shame, how did you both cope with that? How did that sort of manifest itself?
Well, it was a little bit easier for me. I felt ashamed for a long time when it was a secret, because I thought, oh, I'm meant to be like this grown up. I'm a mother. I'm in my 30s, and I've got a good job and a nice house, and I thought I'm supposed to be. I didn't feel like I was grown up enough, if that makes sense. Like I felt like I had failed in some way, even though now I can see that I hadn't failed, but I felt like I had. And when we started paying it off, that's when I sort of realised that I shouldn't be ashamed, and that there are so many people who are in a similar boat, but I just didn't know because no one talks about it. And so it was a lot easier to talk about that, and to also help other people realise that we shouldn't really feel ashamed. These decisions I made like 10 years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I had no responsibilities. I thought, oh, I'll put that odd holiday on a credit card. I'll sort it out. That's quite an innocent thing to think. And then you don't realise, or I didn't realise till it just catches up with you a bit, until you're in a bit of a difficult position and you can't pay it back.
But also, credit is so readily available to us. If you go online and try and buy anything, there'll be a button to pay in 3 at the end. It doesn't even have to be a credit card. And just the language, credit sounds positive. If it was called a debt card, one of our favourite debt commentators in the FT, Sarah Williams, who's online as Debt Camel, at Debt Camel if you want to follow her. She says if it's called a debt card, would so many people take them out because, you know, psychologically it's
That's a
reframing
really good point. Yeah.
what you're building up, and also the whole thing about, you know, like your credit score. It all sounds so positive. You have a credit limit, you know, we'll let you borrow. I don't know what the highest limit was on one of your cards, 3,000,
No,
5,000,
13,000.
thirteen
Yeah, one of my
thousand.
cards. That's high.
You know, and for somebody on, you know, not a mega bucks salary,
Mm.
if a credit card company is saying, well, you can have this credit facility, then at some level in your mind you're thinking, well, yeah, it's okay for me to put this holiday on the credit card, because they clearly think that somebody like me could afford that.
Yeah, and they make it seem so attractive as well. I feel like credit cards with rewards and 0% interest rates, which I didn't really understand at first. So I feel like that you can easily just slip into it. And I feel very lucky that I don't think buy now, pay later was a huge thing when I was really in debt. But now, yeah, I see it everywhere. Like when you're buying a takeaway, or when I'm shopping with the kids, and it's just there. It's so easier.
Even somebody was telling me the other day, you can now use buy now, pay later in the pub.
I think you can use it everywhere.
You know, for like real-time transactions. It's not just
Yeah.
an online. It's not an online transaction anymore. Well, I'm just going to break off from this conversation about debt a little bit to share actually something that Martin Lewis said on TV at the beginning of the year. He did a big episode which you can rewatch on ITVX if you want to, about how to switch your credit card to a 0% deal. But he also covered the sorts of people who really should not be trying to sort out debt themselves, which you very commendably did, I have to say, because your debt resulted from a spending problem rather than spending money necessarily on essentials to keep the wolf away from the door. But Martin's like 3 tests, if you like, if you need to actually approach a debt charity like Step Change or like Citizens Advice, are number 1, if all the minimum repayments on your various debts and credit cards, you know, if that's something that you cannot afford every month, or that's becoming uncomfortably expensive, that is a sign that you should approach an independent debt charity for advice. Another sign is if you added up all of your debts on things like credit cards and overdrafts, does that come to close to your annual salary, just as a rule of thumb, not including student debts and mortgages, that's different, but all of your credit cards, if it's getting to the point that that's what you earn every year and that's the amount that you owe, that's another sign. And then the third sign is, are you losing sleep over this? If it's keeping you up at night, then speaking to a debt counsellor, one of the debt charities, and doing it early before it becomes like that crunch moment, Megan, that you talked about. If I tap this credit card and buy this pair of trainers, is that going to be my last credit balance on my last card used up? Because the one thing that debt charities tell me time and time again is that they can help people so much more if they come to them when they know things of a problem, but not at the point where they've got nowhere left to turn.
Yeah.
Now, we'll go back to your journey now, because you were very much of the opinion that you had lost track of your budget. You were both earning good money. You obviously had a lot of expenses with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. We've done other events like this about the cost of childcare. So how did you work together to actually look at the numbers and practically work out what you could do?
I think our issue had been for such a long time that we felt like our salaries were getting paid in, and it would immediately, because we were in our overdrafts, would go to 0, and then we'd start again. It would be all in the minuses, and we felt like there would never be a way to pay it off. We felt like we were sort of trapped in this horrible sort of cycle. And when we actually had this moment and we sat down together and we thought, like, for the first time, we were like, could we actually do this? So it was quite hard for us, because I think we'd been a bit like heads in the sand and we hadn't really looked at our accounts properly. We added up like every penny of debt, like to the penny. And it was quite a shock when we saw that it was nearly like a few hundred away from £40,000. And we added up all our bills, like every single expense and subscription that came out of our accounts. And we really added it all up and thought, right, so if we paid all our minimums, and if we paid all our bills and everything. Like, is there anything left over, like, for expenses and extras? And we found that there was. It was small, but it was like a little sort of bit of hope. And we thought, okay, let's stop using the credit cards then, because we knew that that's what we had to do, because they were like, we were just so reliant on them. So we just stopped. And it was hard, because it was like a huge overnight change. Went from tap 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 to strict budget, really like cutting back things we felt weren't necessary, but allowing the odd motivational treat, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
but
that's important as well. You've got to have a realistic budget.
Yeah, we tried to make it realistic. It did take a bit of time. Like, the first budget we ever made was a bit like, oh, and like we kept dipping back into our overdrafts, but we noticed our credit cards were coming down, so that was good. We also were very fortunate that we had 0% balance transfer offers. We weren't paying any interest on the credit cards, but
so those debt repayments that you made came straight off the balance. They weren't clearing high interest charges, which is very important.
Yeah, so we had 6 credit cards between us, so they were all on varying lengths of 0% balance offers. So we attacked them like the shortest length first, and then so once we had that budget set up, we actually felt like there could be a chance, even though it felt very challenging. But it was like a nice challenge, because actually we'd never thought this way before. We'd never thought, oh, how could we save some money on this, or how could we do a cheap family day out? Normally we just spontaneously think, let's go here, and then just go somewhere.
Yeah, let's go out to a restaurant. You're not going to get any change out of 100 quid. If you do that,
exactly. Whereas now we think of like, is there an offer on? Can we sign up to the app and can we get 10% off or something? Can we get a free starter? That sort of thing. So it's actually really nice.
Can I ask about your friends? Because I mean, obviously you're sharing all of this on social media, and in many ways, with any kind of bad experience or something that we're sharing, having counselling, for example, it can be easier to talk to strangers than it can to our family or friends, people who know us really well. But when you told your friends, we've got this large credit card debt and we're going to not be doing all of the things socially perhaps that we did, or suggesting to them, instead of doing this, could we do something cheaper, or instead of this play date, could we go on a walk together? How did they react to all of this?
Really well, like really well.
That's so encouraging to hear.
Like, my friends are lovely, but I do think a lot of people worry about, I get messages a lot on Instagram saying, I'm really scared to tell like my partner or my friends or my family. But then sometimes they come back to me and say, oh, I told everyone, and it was fine. Because I feel like, and once I started talking about my journey, I actually had friends and colleagues who I never expected like come up to me and say like, oh, I've got a bit of debt too, and we actually had like a little chat about it, and
a little bonding
session. Opened more sort of like, I had more sort of conversations with them about it that they might not have had, and I definitely wouldn't have. So it was really nice actually to be sharing my story that widely, even though it was a bit nerve-wracking. But also, like, there's a friend I see a lot for dinner sometimes in Birmingham, and she was really good at starting to suggest like cheaper places and like deals we could do. And so everyone's been really, really supportive.
Yeah, I mean, that's so encouraging to hear, because I think that's one of the real benefits of talking about money. We've started doing an admin night at the FT, and we all get together and concentrate on doing our life admin together. And I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago, and one of my colleagues said at the end of it, it's so nice to feel that I'm not alone, because often financial problems and working through them, even if it's just kind of like an admin problem of catching up, it can feel really isolating if you're dealing with this yourself. And often people think, I'm rubbish with money, whereas in actual fact we all feel like that. Even me, the financial expert, so called, at the Financial Times, I miss things. Nobody is perfect, and I think it's wonderful that you're communicating that message and clearly getting so much back from your expanding community on social media. What else do people message you about and tell you about?
I get a lot of lovely messages from people saying when they've cleared a credit card, or when they've had like a bit of a debt win, and that's always so nice, because I love seeing those and sharing those, and we all like to celebrate. I get a lot of worried messages as well, like people worried about their debt, and obviously I'd never give advice, but I like to try and, like a pep talk, I suppose, like say like, positivity, it will be okay. And try and tell them a bit about like how I used to feel, and to make them not feel so alone, I think, is the key thing. And Yeah, I get a lot, but a lot of it is all just like a lot of people say it sounds silly. A lot of people say thank you to me for like just being normal and just sharing normal life. Because I do say now, like sometimes I think like being here right now, I think, oh, like is this right? But because sometimes I don't feel like I'm in control of my money, and even though I've paid off all this debt, I'm now trying to save, and I think like, how do I save? I don't know, I've never done it before, and I just done it. I was a 34-year-old. I don't know what I'm doing, and sometimes I still make like foolish money decisions, and I have to think like, oh, hang on, could have done something better than that.
Well, I think it's important to acknowledge that, because um, the journey towards paying off debt, I mean, obviously there's a big hashtag debt-free community on social media, and social media by its very nature makes us compare ourselves to others. And if people are really good at paying off debts and are saying, hey, I've paid off this credit card, I've snowflaked, I've snowballed, I've avalanched, all of these terms that people come up with, you might think, well, actually, I've made zero progress towards repaying my debts this month because something's happened to me and I'm back to square one. But you've always been keen to share with people that paying off debt is not linear. It's not a line that goes straight down.
Yeah.
It's something that jumps around.
Yeah. Well, ours definitely started off very slowly, as we were just using our salaries to try and get it down, and then I started trying to top up our income a little bit, so like sell the odd pair of dungarees on Vinted, or sell something on eBay, pick up some extra work, and then I very like thankfully started making a bit of money on my social media, which was able to sort of help give us a boost. And I say this a lot because some people think online that they think, oh, you've only done it because of
You've made fortunes
but,
through social media. It's actually quite difficult to make a lot of money.
I do think that has helped me a lot, and it helps speed up the journey a lot. Like we managed to cut down how long we wanted to pay off the debt in half. But I often remember like there was a time where my partner got a bonus from work, or where we put a load of debt onto the mortgage, and we cleared loads of debt, and we thought, great, we're done. We did this twice, and then because we didn't change any habits, like we went straight back up again. And there were times as well while we were doing our debt payoff journey, like it was going down, 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 and then Christmas hit, and we got through Christmas okay, and I was so proud of myself. And then January was just being January, and we went £500 over budget, and I just thought, and I was so upset, and I almost didn't put it on Instagram or TikTok, because I thought people are going to be so disappointed, they're going to think that I failed. And then David was like, no, you've got to, like, I think people will be pleased to see that, it's not always going to be perfect. And yeah, it was just, the comment section was just full. It was like it was a really good post. Everyone was just saying, how honest it was, and they were also saying things like, oh, it's okay, you can get back up, you can try again, and don't worry, and it's a new month in February, so really nice.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's really good to hear. I mean, I also have had I'm not saying I've had debt problems, that's not true, but I have had a very expensive year because I moved house 6 months ago.
Congratulations.
And when you move house, there are all kinds of bills that need to be paid, stamp duty, which ate up an enormous proportion of my savings. So I've got less savings than I had now, and I've had to buy furniture. There's been a lot of one-off costs. And although I still have savings, and I can obviously afford to cover all of my outgoings, as a naturally cautious person in terms of mindset, I found this incredibly discombobulating. I mean, I think I've probably spent more money in the last 6 months than I've probably spent in the last 6 years.
Wow. Yeah.
And that has really rattled me. And I am lucky, I have a partner, and I said to him, like, I just feel really anxious about money in a way that I haven't for a long time, because we've been saving towards the house. Oh, this week I've managed to pick up some extra work, so that's an extra £500 saved. And then it's the mindset of it all flowing out again.
Yeah.
And being able to talk to him about it, and for him to reassure me and say, look, there's lots of one-offs. Let's go and plan our budget for the next 6 months. Let's look at what's happening. Let's see what other levers we can pull. But just recognising that, I was a pranging wreck, basically. But I mean, how important would you say being aligned with David, your partner, was for this to work? Because that is something, you built up these debts together.
Yeah.
So in order to get them down, that I would guess is like an absolutely crucial step.
Yeah, so we've been together 10 years this year, and when we first met, we both had a small amount of debt each. But then when we got together, I think we're both like similar personalities. So we loved going out to dinner, we loved having holidays, we loved, you know, if someone wants to do something, the other one wouldn't say, "Oh, we should be careful." The other one was like, "Yes, let's do it."
And you both have professional jobs.
Yeah, and we had decent jobs, and we didn't have kids then, and we didn't have a mortgage or anything, so we just thought, you know, why not? And I never sort of saved anything for Christmas, or never budgeted. I always thought it was standard to sort of just hope you got to payday, but it was so good when we both sat down and talked together that we were both on the same page at the same time. I wonder actually if he'd sort of been ready for a while, and then I had just caught up, you know, maybe, I'm not sure. And then doing it together was like such a motivation, because we would think of ways, you know how we can get through the next month, and we'd have our sort of sit down budgets, and we talk to each other.
So you'd make time.
Yes, I think that was
this.
yeah. We still try and do that. We still ask each other a lot of questions about money. We know exactly how much each other is saving and like what we put away, and we try not to have any secrets. And often I sometimes say to him, like, "Are you okay with money this month?" I think it's like a habit now, because I would say that like when we paid off the debt, and he was like, "Yeah." And I thought I was going to say it then. Sorry, I was going to say one other thing.
Don't worry, it will come back to you. And in terms of like practical stuff that we can recommend that people who are watching the webinar could consider, in terms of things like, you know, budgeting apps or habits that you adopted, or ways of just sort of like shifting your mindset, what were the things that really worked for you?
So I didn't really use a budgeting app. I wrote it all down on like a sheet, a Google sheet, an Excel, and then I kept revisiting it. I got a little bit hooked at it actually. Like I kept revisiting it all the time, sort of checking, you know, do we have enough money this month for bills to come out? And then I'd sort of work out how much we have for expenses, and I'd keep like a separate spreadsheet of like how much the debt was going down, just to keep myself motivated. Because if I had a month, which I often did, where I didn't pay off that much debt, and I'd feel a bit down about it, I'd look back and be like, "Oh wow, actually,
Look how far we've come.
we've paid this much." But that helped with the mindset, actually looking at the big picture. I got a bit startled if I looked too far ahead, because I thought, "Oh gosh, how many months have I got left to do this?" But also thinking of my children, they're now 5 and 3, and thinking of like them and how much more we could give them if we had our finances a bit straighter. And just like opportunities, like, you know, like even though we went on holidays with credit cards, we didn't want to do that anymore, but I still want to take my family on holidays and make memories and do things. So that was a big drive as well.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I'm going to go to some questions that have been coming in from the audience in a second. Please do keep them coming through. As I said, you can click on the box to the right-hand side of your screen and put one in there, and they'll flash up to me on my iPad. But I'm going to start with some that were sent in advance, because we have many very good questions. So. Credit scores. Here we go. Someone says Experian and other credit score providers. How important is it to know what your credit score is? And is the actual process of like going on these apps and finding out about that a gateway towards encouraging debt? Because of course there's lots of credit card deals on there too. It's a bit of a double-edged sword.
Well, I have absolutely no idea, because when I was in thousands and thousands of pounds of debt, like our debt was split, so I had in my name was £22,500 of debt, which was 3 credit cards and an overdraft. Yet I had a great credit score, so I don't understand. I feel like surely I should have had a poor credit score, and then I could easily get more credit if I wanted. I could easily get a loan, or I could get and it shocked me, because I thought, what? Why are they letting me like top it up? Is it because I've never missed a payment? Is it because like, is my salary okay enough that they think I can afford it? I don't know. It really still sort of stumps me now.
Well, I think that what the credit score is saying is how good you are at repaying the debt. So it's almost like the more borrowing you have, if you show that you're not missing a minimum payment, you're not taking cash out on a credit card from from a cash point, because that's something that's seen as very, very desperate. You're not putting multiple applications through for a credit card at the same time. Again, that's like a sign of desperation that the lenders don't like. Then you have another measure of it, which is like, of all of the credit that is at your disposal, what percentage of it have you used? And if you start to get sort of like more than 60%, 70% of like the absolute maximum that you can put on a card, then that does tend to send a bit of a break coming back down the other way. But equally, if they're still saying to you, and you're thinking, I can't afford to live like this anymore, and the credit card companies are still saying, oh well, actually, we could give you another card, or we could give you another loan. It is really scary, and until buy now, pay later, that won't get fully regulated until July this summer, and of course with that on top as well, Step Change have told me before they've encountered people who've got like 100 or more separate buy now, pay later deals, like all running at the same time, with varying amounts of money just being debited from from their accounts to pay back these things. So it's really easy to lose track of it. And frankly, the credit score to suggest that things are okay. I definitely agree. Whoever asked that question, you should definitely be very, very wary of who the credit score is for. Is it for you, or is it for the lenders? We've got another one here that's come in specifically about children. Here you go. Hello, says the person, I work in a school. At what age do you think we should start teaching young people how to manage their money? So how young were your kids when you started?
Well, I don't, because they're so small at the moment. We do talk to them about money.
Good.
And I say things like, when we're at the shop, they'll pick up, as kids do, all these sweets and come to me, and I'll be like, look, we can afford. I was like, I've got enough money for two sweets each or something. But I haven't really gone further than that. But I do talks in schools now, and colleges, mainly to sort of older, like second sort of age or sixth form age children, which I found really good, and I think they found it useful, because I don't remember sort of learning about that sort of thing in school, like budgeting, or I remember we used to do like a PSHE sort of subject, but I never remember learning about. I would have really liked to learn about how about council tax, or about the water bill, or I feel like you don't really.
It's real life
things. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I share my stepchildren are, they've got children of their own now. Some of them, they've come out the other end of the curve. But I became their stepmum when they were sort of like pre-teens, shall we say. One of them was a teenager, and I wrote about money for a living then. And they were really naturally interested in money, because children are often shielded from money, particularly in households, I have to say, when there's not quite enough money to go around. People don't want children to hear conversations about not being able to afford things, or anything that could frighten them or make them feel anxious. But I just decided to start sharing things with them. When I was paying bills, I'd explain what I was doing. When I was looking for a better deal on something, I would challenge them to see if they could find it. If they wanted a phone, because of course every kid wants a phone. It was like, well, okay, well, what's the best deal that you can find for this phone? And how are we going to, what things could you do for me to earn some money to pay for that? So it was quite good. And then also just encouraging their numeracy. So if we did go out to do something and paid for something, and there was a receipt, instead of sort of hiding the cost from them, I'd say, right, okay, well, how much does this cost us each? And if you look at the bill, who had the most expensive thing, and just sort of get them used to dealing with dealing with numbers, and more sort of age appropriate things as they got older. I'll tell you one really embarrassing thing that happened once. The advent of Rightmove. I remember being at a barbecue. I remember this vividly. One of their friends lived in a very expensive area of North London, and they looked up the house on Rightmove, and suddenly one of them piped up, "This house cost 1.2 million pounds."
Oh,
And,
no.
and yeah, there was a very interesting conversation about what is a mortgage on the bus home afterwards. But you know, children, it's all around them. They are going to be curious, and they're going to ask questions. And I think suppressing those conversations is not the right thing to do. So I'm really glad that you do that. A few questions coming in about credit cards. When you paid off your credit cards, did you cancel them? Interesting question.
Yeah, I for ages had no idea what to do. What should I do? In the end, because I had 3 credit cards, I got rid of 2. So I cancelled 2, and I kept 1 for just. I never use it, but it's like.
In an emergency.
Yeah, I try. We have an emergency fund now, which I'm very pleased, and I'm trying to build that up. But I thought, I think my anxious mind was like, what if there was some huge emergency that we couldn't cover? Like, so it's like a little sort of safety net, but only a. But I've not touched it since. And we sometimes book, if we were going to book a holiday too. I learned only very recently that it's safer to sometimes book. Is that right?
If it's something over £100, yes, and you get this, it's called Section 75 protection. So if you pay with a credit card, you do have a little bit more protection if something goes wrong. I mean, debit cards nowadays, you've got a similar thing called chargeback. But yes, it's absolutely true. You know, if you order something with a credit card, you do have, and it costs more than £100. Your level of consumer rights if something goes wrong are greater. But like on its own, is that a reason to have a credit card? Lots of people ask the podcast, you know, do I need to get a credit card at the age of 21 in order to get a mortgage by the time I'm 30? And you know, our friend Debt Camel, Sarah Williams, she says no. You know, you don't need to get a credit card if you don't need one. Again, like scoring, all of these things, mortgage lenders, you know, they'll look at your bank statements, you know, they'll look at your salary, they'll look at how much you're spending month by month. Obviously, they are going to look at, you know, how responsible you are with debts and the level of any debts that you have. But it's absolutely not a prerequisite. And the other thing that she has told me before is that if people don't cancel their credit cards, like we were talking earlier about the mindset of just popping things on the credit card, you know, well, if the line of credit is still there and you haven't cancelled the card, then unfortunately it can be a temptation for that sort of spending to keep happening again.
Yeah, what I had to do was cut up the credit card, so I actually don't have it, and delete it off my Apple Pay. So if there was a true enough emergency, I'd have to reorder the credit card, get it sent to me. So I'd have to do a lot to get it. Which encourage doesn't mean so it means I won't use it randomly.
Yeah.
Deleting them off of Apple Pay was the key thing for us because we use Apple Pay so much and it was always just there. So as soon as we got rid of all the credit cards on there, actually we found it's not, because you just can't use them. Yeah.
Well, somebody has actually asked about what's the how dare you ask this question? What's the best credit card at the moment in terms of points deals? Now, okay, I'm not going to
even know that
answer. I'm not going to tell you the answer for this. If you want to, there's a very good website called Head for Points, which is for points nerds who do a lot of business travel. Even they say if you can't afford to pay off the monthly balance of these so-called reward cards every single month, the level of interest that some of these points cards charge is like in the 3 figures. It's prohibitively expensive. But as you said, that was something that tempted you. You know, I'm getting points on what I'm spending.
Well, it wasn't so much points. I was more attracted by like the 0% deals because I thought, it's free money. But then once the deal's finished, then it all catches up with you. And actually, I don't know if I've told you this before, but for a TikTok video, I added up all the interest I'd ever had to pay on my Barclay card.
I haven't seen that one.
On one credit card, which was my Barclay card. I decided to add it all up, and I was like, this will be interesting / shocking. And it was £2,700, I think. So that was just money that and even with these offers I always tried to use, I'd still spent £2,700 on nothing.
But then even if you've got a balance, say you've got a balance of like £3,000 or £4,000 on a credit card, frankly, not that difficult to do nowadays. And you think, okay, my 0% period is coming to an end. I'm going to transfer this balance to another 0% card. It's not free to do that, even if you do it so you don't get charged interest and the next one starts, you've still got to pay normally 2%, 3% of the outstanding balance as the fee, which could be on a balance of that size, a couple of £100.
And we used to do that a lot. Like between me and David, we used to move our balances around. So if he had a good 0% deal but I wasn't allowed one, a bit of my balance would go to him, and if he couldn't get one, I could, then some of my. So we were always like trying to keep on these 0%. But what the worst thing we would do, or the worst thing I personally would do, is that I would spend on a credit card, get to the end, then I'd be like, okay, let's find a 0% deal. I'd move it over, and I'd be like, great, that's fine, I'll set that to minimum payments, let it sort itself out. And then I had this empty card, and when I should have been like, put that away, but then I was like, okay, tap 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 again, and let's spend. So it was a miserable cycle, and I wish I could go back and be like, what are you doing? But at the time I just thought nothing of it really.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like you say, it's cumulative, and if you're making small purchases rather than putting like a really big thing on a credit card, it feels like you're spending a lot of money. It adds up quicker than you realise. This is an interesting question that's come in. Do you have any advice for neurodiverse individuals who struggle with the concept of managing money? So we're talking here about people with autism, people with ADHD. I'm assuming that you don't have ADHD. I know Claire Seal, who we've had in here before.
Oh, Claire Seal, yeah.
Claire Seal, who also got into debt, paid it off, is a big force for good on social media. She has ADHD and has made a lot of content, I have to say, about the problems, the extra problems of managing your finance if you are neurodiverse. I mean, is that something that you could share any thoughts on?
It's funny you say that, because I have never looked into what I am, but because of the stuff I share, managing money and the messy house, and I share a lot about just the chaos.
Overwhelm.
Overwhelm, mum overwhelm, that sort of thing. I do get a lot of comments and messages saying, are you neurodiverse, do you have ADHD? And I just have to be like, I don't know. So I just don't know. So I don't know if I've had any advice, but I definitely can relate, because I do get very overwhelmed, I feel, and with a lot of things. But I had to take it like a little portion at a time with paying off the debt. So like 1 month to the next month. Like if I thought about it as too huge,
this is going to take me 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. Then I would just feel like, oh well, I may as well just sit down and stop. But I would say, like, this is supposed to be my only bit of advice, like concentrate on it in tiny little segments. Like even if it's just to the end of the day, like can you get to the end of the day, like, or to the end of the week, and then sort of assess and just sort of keep looking back. And I had to keep sort of like a child, really, like praising myself, like, oh yes, you've come so far, like keep going, that sort of thing. Did help.
But I think it's the same with any habit, whether it's like changing your diet, giving up smoking. It's all about the smaller wins adding up to a bigger win, and then when you do have a setback, not stopping, just keeping the momentum going. We have got a question here about subscriptions, the subscription economy. Now, so I mean, this is obviously about looking at your accounts, looking at your phone, because a lot of subscriptions are on our phones, and we just get the payments coming off on our bank statement saying Apple Pay or Android Pay, but it doesn't actually say what it's for. Got to really go into the inner workings of the phone. Have recurring subscriptions become more onerous for us in the era of streaming and deliveries of services and products? What would you recommend to people watching? Interesting question.
Well, that is interesting, because I was full of subscriptions. I felt like
you were full of subscriptions.
I felt like I had loads of subscriptions. So we had to really go through and sort of like think, do you need that New York Times crossword subscription? Like, I know it's only small, but I was like, no, I probably don't. I probably could cancel that, and other things like that. And we had Amazon, and we had Netflix, and we had Disney, and we had Now TV, and all those different sort of entertainment ones. And So it was really trying to go through, and because they'd come out, and I'd had moments as well where I'd forget one was coming out, and then you'd have like a notice saying your subscription has been paused because you haven't paid or there's no money in your account. And so once we'd whittled them down a bit, it became easier to manage. But we also didn't want to blanket ban everything, like no more Netflix, no more Prime, like
well,
no
especially
more
if you're not spending money on going out.
Yeah, exactly. So we had to sort of balance it somehow.
Yeah.
I did things like I loved getting my nails done, and I haven't picked back up the habit, but I stopped doing that because I thought I can live without that. But then there was one thing me and David decided we couldn't live without, which was like our weekly takeaway. Like on a Friday, kids are in bed. It was our time to like.
That was your treat.
Yeah, that was our treat. And weirdly, that sort of did keep us going because we were like, oh well, we've got a treat coming on Friday, and we try and still take the kids out for days out, but we'd try and get them cheaper if we could, which was helpful.
Good. No, I think it's important to acknowledge that. You do need a treat. It can't just be cut.
Yeah.
But very good question about subscriptions. Also, in the way that we're sort of nudged into making worse financial choices than we might imagine. Sort of harking back to the ADHD question. There are lots of ways that digital companies make it easy for us to just keep paying these things. So if you go into the inner workings of your phone, go into wherever it says subscriptions, there's almost certainly something that will be toggled off, which you need to toggle on, which says something like notify me when I'm going to be charged for this subscription. Because if you opt into emails, then you'll get an email saying you're about to be charged, or this annually renewing subscription, because that's another shock to a monthly budget. All of a sudden, £120 comes out for renewing Amazon Prime, or whatever it might be. But if you do get the notifications, I have many times been able to challenge a subscription renewal and said, hang on a minute, you've just taken the money out of my account, but I wanted to cancel this, and I have managed to claw it back and get it refunded. So that's my free tip to anyone who is similarly addicted to subscriptions and things like newspapers and magazines. If you're never taking them out of the packaging, as painful as it is to admit that you're not that person who reads the New Yorker or whatever it might be. Obviously, keep the Financial Times one. If you had that, then yes, get rid of it. Okay, a serious question now that's come in, but I think it's important that we tackle it. At what point in a debt crisis is it advisable to consider filing for personal bankruptcy if your situation has simply imploded into a disaster? Well, thank you, that person, whoever you are, for asking that question. I think you know what I'm going to say, which is you need to speak to an independent debt charity. And I say an independent debt charity because one of the things that I think we try and do with debt is we think, I've got myself into this hole, I need to dig myself out of it. I don't want to talk to family or friends, even though that could be a big source of support, because as you say, most of us have got some kind of debt. Lots of us have got experience of dealing with debts that have got out of control and could be an emotional support, if not a practical one. But also there are so many solutions online. If you do go online and search for debt solutions, the types of companies that are going to come up at the top of your search are likely to be ones who are selling you an insolvency service, a solution to your debts, and that may not be the right one for your circumstances. So this is why I say to people, go to Step Change, go to Citizens Advice, go to CAP, C-A-P, which is another very big debt charity that can help you, because they'll look through all of the available solutions and work out not which is the right one for their profits, but which is the right one for your own financial circumstances. And there are lots of things that can be done. Bankruptcy is not the only answer. You could find that there are other solutions that are available, but that has to be done through a trained debt counsellor who will go through your incomings, your outgoings. It isn't something that you can do yourself online, and they will be able to help you activate breathing space, for example, which gets your creditors off your back if you are being hassled, because you didn't ever go into that stage of not being able to pay your bills. But of course, we know from all of the horrific statistics that are out there that so many people are just putting everyday life on a credit card because there's no way that they can afford to pay the bills otherwise.
Well, we got to that point as well. Like what I share a lot online is that like the first half of us being in debt was us in our 20s, no responsibilities, living a bit too lavishly, and then the second half was when it all caught up to us, and actually we had a mortgage, then we had 2 children, I was on maternity leave, and actually it was starting to, the credit card wasn't being used for fun and holidays anymore, it was being used for the Tesco shop and the petrol and like the nappies and stuff, and that's when it all got a bit too real, and we didn't really know how we were going to get out.
Yes. Well, anyway, I hope that was helpful to the person who asked that question. We've also got some questions that have been coming in about savings. Now, I should say, your target when you started your journey on social media was that you and your partner wanted to pay off £40,000 worth of debt.
Yeah.
But your new target now is that you want to try and build up a similar amount in savings.
Yes.
Now, can you tell us a little bit more about how that's going? Then we'll go to the savings questions.
So I think because what motivated me personally so much was having that goal. Like we didn't have an end goal, but we were like, we want to pay off £40,000 of debt. And then when that had finished, we knew that we had a lot of money, like at least £600 a month each was coming out of our accounts to go on these debt repayments for this whole year and a half that we were doing it. So we thought, well, let's keep up that momentum while we can.
We've got used to living without that £600.
Exactly. So why don't we channel it into a savings account? And then I thought, well, we both thought, why don't we like make ourselves a new challenge? And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to save £40,000 as like a big middle finger to the debt sort of thing. And so we decided to try and save £40,000 by the end of this year. And that's what we're trying to do, like aggressively say. We'd like to move house, for a bigger house for our children. And so that's sort of our goal. And we just want to have a big savings to do that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the whole mindset thing of having a goal is really important. And like for years and years, building up to our house move last year, I was sort of like saying to my husband, I'd really like to move house. I'd really like to move house. And I've always been good at saving money. It kind of goes with the territory. Doing what I do, being a complete tightwad. But until you put the numbers around it and you think, okay, so if we had this much money, then we could afford to get a mortgage on this sort of a property, but the stamp duty that we would need to pay would be this much, and the legal fees and the moving costs and all of the other things, and you start to sort of build up a picture of what that dream looks like in the financial reality, if it were. But unless you do that, I just think it's such a powerful motivation to be able to say, okay, we're on track to do this. And like anyone who's watching today who's saving for retirement, we have had a couple of questions about pensions as well. And that's a similar goal.
Yeah.
Like how much have we got in the pot for when we eventually either choose to or can't work anymore. I mean, what sort of conversations have you had about long-term financial goals, like saving, investing, pensions, all of that jazz?
Well, I talk a lot about, I try and do a monthly update on my savings challenge, like how far we are. I think we've saved I haven't actually done March's yet, but I think we've got to about £16,000 now. So we've got a way to go if we want to get to 40k by the end of the year. But really pleased coming from someone who's never had savings before.
How does it feel to have
savings? It feels wild, really, because to know that that's there, it's such a safe, secure feeling to know that if something does go wrong, it would hurt me to spend it, but I would still have it. So we try and separate it into different pots, like an emergency pot. Then we've obviously got the big house pot. But then there's also things like, I had to think, how should I save? You hear about ISAs and investing. I've been trying to learn a bit about investing, but I haven't spoken about that much because I still don't really know what I'm doing.
You're at the beginning.
I'm at the very beginning.
Yeah.
But I would like to sort of tell people what I'm doing. I mainly just share what I'm doing. I never try and sort of say, you should do this too. It's just like, this is what I'm doing. So here's how I've messed up. Here's how I got it right. Yeah, see
And
what
so,
you think.
so what kinds of savings accounts are you using to put the money in? Have you got a cash ISA, for example?
I've invested my first £2,000, which is quite cool. I got a stocks and
Oh,
shares
you've got a
ISA.
stocks and shares.
Yeah,
Excellent.
which
Okay,
was
that's
cool.
advanced, but that's good because you've got your emergency
I did a little
fund
course
first.
as well, a course on investing, because I had no idea what I was doing. We've also got an emergency fund, which is in like a normal savings account. We've also got I think, what you said, a cash ISA, which is where we're saving for the
You
house.
don't pay tax on the savings interest, which if you're a higher rate taxpayer, watching if you earn more than £50,000, then you can only earn £500 in interest on your savings before tax is applied. And if you earn a lot of money, over £125,000, then you can't earn any interest on your savings without paying tax on it. So that's where the cash ISAs really come into their own. I mean, at the moment, there's lots of savings accounts, just ordinary savings accounts around where you can earn just over 4% interest. Is the best rate at the moment, which is not bad. And I certainly think it's motivational for people when you see the interest on your savings being added on. If you've been so used to seeing interest being added on in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do like that part.
If you've got a credit card bill, but in terms of the questions that we've had about savings, one here that you might have thought about: should I focus instead of saving on paying off my mortgage? I mean, that is an interesting question because if you do have a mortgage, it is possible to make overpayments up to a certain level. Although the big problem with that is that once you've paid money into your mortgage, if you needed to get it out again in a hurry, it's obviously very, very difficult compared to having a savings account, whatever type of account that might be, where you can get your hands on the cash.
Yeah, I've actually seen a lot of debate about this online at the moment, like other people saying, like, is it best to invest or is it best to overpay the mortgage? And I don't know really. I do sometimes overpay our mortgage a tiny bit because I like seeing that it might make a small difference, but it's not like my entire focus. But we do small regular payments per month because we feel like we can now. Whereas when we were paying off debt, the only thing we saved for was emergencies, and it was a very small emergency pot. We tried to keep it near 1,000, but it was normally more about £800. And Christmas, that was the one thing, because I didn't want to have to go through another Christmas of putting it all on a credit card. So that was the only things we saved for. But now, I sort of sometimes get a bit overwhelmed because I think, like, should I be investing? Should I overpay the mortgage? And should I save in this ISA? Like, there's such a lot of information online that you can sort of think like, well, am I doing the right thing?
Okay, well, I've got a tip for you and for everyone else watching. I mentioned Flick, the FT's financial literacy and inclusion campaign, at the start of this video. Flick has just published loads of free short form video content on the Flick website, which is ftflick.com. If you go to ftflick.com and then /adult-learning, that will give you access to all of the videos that we've produced, which cover investing, which cover savings, which cover paying down debt, which cover all kinds of things. And there's lots of information and resources within those videos that anybody can watch, and feel free to share them with everyone you know. Now, before we say goodbye to you today, thank you very much for all of your questions, but we've got one question for you before you leave us. So again, either use the phone to take a picture of the QR code, which I think, yes, there we go. The QR code is on the screen, or go to sli.do so that you can vote. Now, after spending an hour with us this lunchtime, thank you very much for giving up your lunchtime to spend it with us. How do you feel about managing your money now? What are your confidence levels? If you could let us know by just tapping on the screen and having a vote. Very confident, somewhat confident, not very confident, not confident at all. Have we done anything to change that? Well, while you are voting there, Megan, last word to you. If people watching today and on Catch Up could just take one action this week, one small reset moment, what would you suggest?
I would say just have a look at your money. Like, that's the one thing I never used to do. I never used to look at my accounts. I never used to. I'd ignore a lot of my statements, that sort of thing. I think just having a little check-in, which I still do now, like a little 5-minute check-in. Is everything okay? Is all the bills coming out all right? Just how is everything looking? I think that can really help, because it can reassure you, or it can show you that you might need to do something a bit different. That really helps me still. So that's my one thing I'd say.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll share one as well. You mentioned that there are lots of things that you want to learn about still with money, and sometimes people can feel overwhelmed because of that too. But I encourage people to just have a list. We all have a list, don't we? Like, if you've got a list of things that I don't know very much about but would like to find out about, just have a way of recording it. And whether that's like finding out what the match is on my pension at work. If I pay in a bit more to my pension, will my company pay a bit more in? That's a great question to find out the answer to. If it's something that you specifically want to find out about, like what's the best savings interest available on a savings account at the moment, or how can I find the answer to a particular problem, like should I change my electricity provider, should I lock into a fix? That's something that lots of people are doing right now, with the worries about energy bills maybe increasing as a result of what's going on in the world. I just find you don't have to do it in that moment, but just write it down and make a list of things that you want to tackle, and maybe tackle an easy one first so that you get a bit of momentum, and then go on to tackling something else, because you've proved to everyone that you can change your mindset. We're not either good with money or terrible with money. We've all got it in with us, inside of us, to be better, and a lot of that starts from confidence.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
So speaking of which, the results of the second poll, how confident do you feel now? I'm delighted to tell you that 54% of you say that you're now feeling very confident with money, and those who say that they're not confident at all has dropped down to 0%.
Oh, nice.
So I think that's the only 0% that we like to hear about. So thank you very much, Megan, for your honesty and insight, and thank you to all of us for watching. That website again, ftflick.com/adult-learning, ftflick.com/adult-learning, bit of a mouthful. That's where you can find all of our free online resources and videos. Do look at the websites for Step Change and Citizens Advice if you are in need of independent advice on your debts. And then remember, please, financial well-being, it's not about perfection. It's about progress and small incremental steps to getting towards that bigger picture goal, just as we've been hearing from our special guest in the studio today, Megan Archer Fox, better known online as that girl in debt. You're going to have to change your handle now.
Well, people say that, but I thought that's just how I'm known now.
Okay, well, from all of us here at the Financial Times, on behalf of Flick and FT Wellbeing, thank you very much for joining us today. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at Claire B. Any other questions about this event, or indeed anything else that you'd like to see the Financial Times cover in this space, do feel free to send me a DM. It's been a pleasure to spend our lunch hour today with you. Goodbye.